chosen by the world legacy. The rulers of this star were not human. That world was ruled by 7 mechanical lifeforms known as the Mekk-Knights. And, across the land, spread their vanguard, the crawlers. These crawlers tend to swarm and destroy all human-made structures in their path. They most likely lack any emotions, helpless before those ruthless machines. Mankind had no choice but to live in hiding. Dense with thick trees, gloomy even in the daytime, a hinterland known as Forest of the Stars. Therein lays a hidden village where humans lived inconspicuously. The village was protected by a barrier that would prevent intruders from invading, or even discovering it. The ritual wand, passed down through many generations, made the barrier extremely resistant, and it had never broken, not once. But even so, the villagers were suffocated by their anxieties day after day, not knowing when the great threat would come knocking at their doorstep. From within the suffocating unease of the village, there were still those determined to fend off the crawlers. Orim and Ningirsu, there was a reason they fought so desperately. It was the village priestess, and the younger sister of Ningirsu, IB. From birth, the priestesses possess a divine power that synergizes with their ritual wand to create barriers. IB's power was the strongest the village had ever seen in its history, but it was meager compared to the frightening forces that grew stronger by the day. Her companions saw how hard she was trying to put on a brave face for the villagers, and wished they could lighten her burden, even by a little. Orim and Ningirsu, along with the baby dragon Embark, crossed the barrier in hopes of slaying even just one crawler. One day, IB heard from inside the forest a faint sound like that of a human voice. Orim and Ningirsu could not hear it. However, IB proclaimed that she keeps hearing the voice. Afraid IB would venture into the forest alone, Orim, Ningirsu, and the baby dragon Embark set foot inside the hinterland. The sun had already set, leaving only starlight to guide them. The scent of trees and soil hung in the cold air. Though her footing was unsure, IB ventured into the forest as if she was being guided. Careful not to lose sight of her, the 3 looked out for crawlers as they followed her. Suddenly, with an abrupt shriek, IB vanished before their eyes. Rushing to the place where they'd lost sight of her, they saw IB had fallen off a low cliff. It appeared IB had been so spellbound in the direction of the voice that she hadn't noticed there was no ground before her. The 3 descended the cliff and were relieved to find IB uninjured. Before their eyes, a mysterious structure appeared. If it had been there before, they would have noticed it, but, as if the structure had been there for hundreds of years, it was ensconced in trees and entwined in ivy. They nervously approached the building. The wand IB held in her hand glowed, and the building started to rumble, as if in response. A mighty light radiated from the building, blowing aside the trees and cloaking everything in blinding light. Even with their eyelids closed, the light pierced mercilessly through. When they finally opened their eyes, a fairy fluttered in the air before them. The fairy spoke to the startled party.
I am Li, the World Chalice Fairy, a spirit that had been sealed inside the building that released the bright light known as the World Legacy World Chalice.
In previous times, it was her duty to guide mankind, but was obstructed by the Mekk-Knight. For many years, she had been waiting for a world hero capable of activating the World Chalice, and that they are those world heroes.
Please, lend me your strength and gather the scattered starlight and save the world from the great darkness.
She spoke. Though bewildered by Li's story, Orim and the group were moved by her earnestness and decided to lend a hand. Hearing their resolve, the fairy Li smiled and bestowed upon them the powers of the awakened World Chalice.
protect humankind.
Accepting Lee's earnest wishes, Orm and the group promised to help her. Accompanied by Lee, the group set off to return to the village, but they encountered several crawlers who blocked their way. Orm, Ningirsu, and Imduk stood before the crawlers with their new strength coursing through their bodies. As they stood between the monsters and what they set out to protect, tension hung heavy in the air. A cold sweat dripped from Orm's chin and dampened the forest soil. As the great tension crescendoed, the party suddenly seized upon their foes, lunging toward the exoskeletons of the crawlers. Orm's sword cleaved the enemies with ease, Ningirsu's lance pierced nimbly, and Imduk's claws teared ferociously at their metal hides. The battle was over almost as quickly as it had started. The power of the World Chalice that Lee had granted them was much greater than expected. They couldn't conceal their surprise at the World Chalice's great power that now dwelled in their bodies. According to Lee, there are 6 more world legacies in the world with equal power to the World Chalice. If they were to be recovered, it would be possible not only to destroy the crawlers, but to destroy the Mekk-Knights who ruled the world. This information provided a great ray of hope for the village people who've lived so long in the gloomy forest. Following Lee's words and the guidance of the World Chalice, the young folks of the Forest of the Stars set out on a journey to seek the next world legacy. And so began the journey of Orm and the party in search of the world legacy. Although the party was on a mission to save the world, as their first time in the outside world, everything they saw and heard felt fresh and vivid. No matter how many crawlers would appear, Orm and his friends would fight them off, and they did so for several days. How long must they have walked, with Lee as their guide, and the World Chalice as their beacon? A humid wind caressed their cheeks. Before the party lay a vast swamp. A great artifact was submerged in the muddy expanse, the giant armor lying in the bog. Was one of the express purposes of this trip the world legacy known as the World Armor. However, they found more than just the World Armor there. Not only on the surface of the armor, but also on the inside, dark figures squirmed. Like ants on the corpse of a dead insect, crawlers swarmed on the world armor. Their number was countless. From a red monocular emanated a bizarre light that filled the party's field of vision. The horrific sound of the crawlers' metal hides scraping against each other united into a thunderous cacophony, as if the earth were shaking. Standing before the 3 were superior specimens possessing power far greater than the crawlers that had crossed their path previously. Witnessing an overwhelming sight, the party decided it was reckless to try to break through from the front. On Lee's suggestion, the 3 friends dared not engage, and instead headed for the world armor. With the world armor in front of them, Orum's party became blocked by a swarm of crawlers. No matter how many monsters they defeated, a new swarm appeared, trampling the debris of the fallen. Now divided, the party struggled. The seemingly endless battles had whittled the party's strength down to almost nothing. They were unable to advance, but retreating wasn't an option either. They had no choice but to fight until all strength was gone. Just then, as Orum and the party were about to collapse, Lee called out to them.
By defeating the superior X-Crawler, you should be able to halt the movements of the other crawlers.
In the midst of the battle, Lee had discovered that the X-Crawler was the commander of the crawlers. Trusting Lee's insight, the party pierced through the siege and closed in on the X-Crawler. The X-Crawler resisted fiercely, but they channeled the last of their strength to defeat it. Just as the commander collapsed, the swarm of crawlers surrounding the party suddenly stopped moving. Greatly wounded, Orum and the party finally arrived under the world armor, but there were more than just crawlers there. 7 colors of light suddenly shone down from the heavens. There appeared the 7 knights. The figures before them were metallic, and emitted a radiant glow that enveloped their bodies in a lustrous light. The Mekk-Knights, who ruled over mankind and all of the world, had now descended to this very place. Orum and his friends found it difficult to describe the figures with mortal words, and could only stand frozen in their otherworldly presence. Then, suddenly, the Mekk-Knights reached their hands out, silently. A mysterious energy sprung forth from their hands and began to shroud IB. IB was exhausted now, completely spent. The magical barrier provided by IB had no resistance to the force field. The rest of the party desperately struggled to rescue IB. However, with the same light from which they appeared, IB and the 7 knights vanished without a trace. Lee cautioned of the danger if IB's wand were stolen and the other world legacies fell into the wrong hands. Orum and his comrades set out to rescue IB and recover the next world legacy.